Welcome to Futro Hidden Movie Gems. Today I have some very special guests. But wait, I want to do my quote really quick. Carl! Oh, Carl! So my first guest is Tyler Huxford.
Wanna.
Wait, who says that? Is that Glenn?
That's Carol to Daryl. Like right when they get to the jail scene.
That's right. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
It's frequent like bedtime banter, me and my wife, so ever since that episode.
And my second guest, Grant Mitchell.
Wait, I need to find a quote really quick.
Oh my gosh, Grant, there's a million quotes.
I know.
Just do a zombie.
That sounded great.
No.
Turns out Grant was the voice for the zombies the whole time.
Yep.
I can't help you, get out!
That's a great Rick Grimes impersonation.
No, Ty does the best. Oh my gosh.
I can't think of one. Sorry.
Oh, your zombie impression was on par.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get right into it. What was it like watching the first time and rewatching it for this pod? Or just watching, I guess, the series as a whole?
Yeah, so I didn't rewatch anything really.
Up to when did you watch it as well?
So I've watched up to, I think, season 9.
There's just 10 seasons, isn't there?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Because I remember season 7, I think, was coming out, or season 8. Whichever one, like, they did the big reveal of who Negan killed. And, like...
Season 7.
Oh, how
Okay,
far
yeah.
have you gotten along in the show, Tyler? So we don't... Do you care if we spoil stuff or not?
Don't you worry about it. No, that's. I mean, Yesenia and I
you've
already
already read
watched
the
that
book.
episode. That's why I know it's season 7, episode 1. That's how they start the show, and they take that whole episode to kind of finally reveal who it was he killed off. You know.
Right.
Yeah. Did you like that they did it the same way they did it in the book? Because apparently Glenn he requested that he died the same way, which is crazy because a couple episodes before that he was like on the ground and there was like blood all over him and you thought he was getting ripped apart, but apparently it was the guy on top of him and then he dived under the trash can.
Oh, that part was trippy. I can talk about that, but I remember like Yesenia obviously is watching these episodes with me, so I told her, I was like, I have a problem with this because that's like because I said you know, sorry to interrupt you, Grant, but moments like that kind of ruin the story in the graphic novel because if Negan doesn't kill Glenn, which it sure seemed like wasn't going to be the case when he had that guy fall on top of him and he's got all those zombies swarming him, it's like then Maggie doesn't have that awful vendetta for revenge, which is an incredible side story. And so I was like, they're ruining this. And so I was telling you something. He's not dead. He's not dead. There's no way he'll die because I know how he dies. And then I'm like, no, that's another death they got wrong. I can't believe they did this. And anyways, that's the way it went. So.
Well, but they've made so many changes. I wouldn't have put it past them to kill him off. It just seemed like such a kind of a pathetic way to go. I was like, oh man, like of all the ways to get killed off. Right?
Yeah, and he was my favorite character of all time, the whole show.
Really?
So, Glenn was my favorite.
You don't like Daryl better, huh? I feel like Daryl.
I do like Daryl a lot, but like I think Glenn was my favorite though.
I think in the book, Rick is my favorite, and then the show, Daryl's probably my favorite.
That's a good pick, though.
Actually, a close second though would have to be, who does Rick hook up in the book? That's so annoying in the show.
Who does he hook up with that he doesn't hook up with in the show, or who does he?
Yeah, so he hooks up with Michonne in the show, but who does he hook up with in the book? What? Andrea. So I love Andrea in the book.
You love Andrea in the book. You don't love her in the show, though, right?
Yeah, she almost kills Daryl. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't she the one who like sucks up to the governor, right?
Oh, guys, like.
Oh, and the governor is like a whole nother thing. Yeah. Okay, we'll get into that too. Okay, so. No. Sorry, Grant. Did you finish your thought of what it was?
No, you're good. Well, so I started the show. I had not watched any of it like in high school or anything. So I came into it when season 7 was coming out, like pretty soon. And so I binge watched seasons 1 through 6, like within a semester or two at my like first year of college. And so like I was totally into it. And then they were coming out in like February with the first episode of season 7. And so I didn't have to wait forever like everyone else did. They're like, who died? You know? And so I was pretty lucky like coming in at that time. And then the next year I watched the next season, and then I don't think I've seen season 9 or 10 yet. So I still have to finish the show. But I'm just at this point, I don't really know if I will. I want to, but it's just a long time commitment. So
yeah, right.
But yeah, so that's kind of been my journey, I guess, of watching it. But
okay, all right, Tyler, tell us your story.
Yeah, so my story with Walking Dead is kind of a lengthy story. It kind of begins, the reason Walking Dead is so precious to me is I think because I think ever since I met Jordan, one of my best friends in my life, I feel like Walking Dead has always been in the background. I was always made aware of Walking Dead ever since meeting Jordan. But
was the game the first thing I introduced you to? I feel like it might have been.
Is what the
Telltale?
first thing you
the
introduced me
Telltale game, The Walking Dead. I think that was the first thing I introduced to you.
It could be. And Jordan, I remember you were really into zombies, and I am really not into zombies. I didn't get it because I don't know, like I'm not into gore.
Sure.
So I was just like, I don't want to watch a show that's all about zombies. But you would always talk about it, and I'm glad you did. But this was like the comet that just didn't quite, touch down on Earth. It was like you showed it to me in college, maybe an episode or two, and I wasn't into it yet. And then it was the second time we lived together that you had actually showed me the graphic novel. And even before that, I think that I was living in Springville and I didn't have anything to watch, and I was like, oh, everybody's talking about Walking Dead. It wasn't just Jordan. Walking Dead was this huge show. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch a few episodes. And I did. I actually watched a couple episodes and I thought, you know what? This isn't terrible. I was reading them in Spanish. The Springville Library had issues of Walking Dead in Spanish. So that's because I was trying to learn Spanish, and that's why I watched the show, now that I think about it, is because I had watched, I was just, the Spanish section of the library is kind of small. I was using things with pictures in it because that makes it easier to read, and Walking Dead had that. So I started reading it, watched the show, and then when I got serious but I watched the show, and as you know, season 1 is really well done, and then it's like season 2 and season 3 kind of just drop off. And Jordan, you've since explained to me why that was, that the director wasn't the director's changed hands, or at least the producer, and so it was just done very differently.
It was the director, yeah.
But when it really took off, Jordan, is when you moved in, and for some reason we started reading those graphic novels, and I read them so quickly, Jordan. I got up to real time. I was reading the issues as quickly as they were coming out.
You're like, when's the next book coming out?
When's the next book coming out?
It hasn't even been released. You're like, what?
That was our monthly discussion, and so I have very fond memories of that. Obviously, that's one of the best times of my life, living with you and Mick. And then I remember, we even were reading the graphic novels just as the last issue had come out. Like, we read that in real time. Like, I probably started reading The Walking Dead 3 months before the last issue came out, or something like that. So watching the show has been completely nostalgic, and I love the nostalgia, and just like, when I think of Walking Dead, I think of Jordan, I think of dear friends, I think of good times. But it's also very frustrating on the other side, where again there are some very real differences between the graphic novel and the show. And I'm not going to talk about how the show isn't as well done as the graphic novel, because if we do that, I could spend hours talking about. But that's anything, right?
That's
like,
fair.
why are the Harry Potter books better than the Harry Potter movies?
Yes.
I mean, we could. That's just the way things are when you're trying to recreate somebody's world that they've spent a career writing about and things like that. Like, I get that. It's never going to be the same. But Walking Dead has gone rogue in a lot of these seasons and episodes, and I really think it was done to appease to ratings and viewers, and that's what frustrates me. I mean, these characters are very different than their other characters. Characters are living that are supposed to be dead. Characters are dead that are supposed to be living. Characters you love, you end up hating. And there's so many of those, and it's frustrating, but it also is kind of fun to turn to my wife and say, well, in the graphic novel, that's not how this actually happens. And so it's and it keeps things suspenseful too, because once again, they really make it look like Glenn is dying when he's not dying, and you're like, well, he could actually be dying, because they don't kill off anybody else when they're supposed to in this show. So that was my experience. A little bit of nostalgia, a little bit of frustration. Certainly has kept me on my toes, because I have no idea what's coming up next. I mean, for all I know, they're going to kill Rick Grimes, in the episode 7 of season 7, he won't make it to season 10, but that's what I think.
Well, and a few details to your story. So, do you remember playing The Walking Dead Telltale with you? And you were the only person that I played with when every decision came. You just sit there in silence, and I'm like, yeah. You're like, I want to hear what they have to say.
Is that the video game?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was.
There's 4 options, and you would always choose the silent one. You're like, I just want to see what happens.
That's true. I was like the sociopath who wouldn't respond at all, no emotion.
It's okay. It's better than Sebastian. He's like, wait, where's my option where I can just axe them in the face? And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
I remember that.
And another detail too is I was actually editing. So I have a lot of friends that are very sensitive sensitive to, certain material. So I was going through and I would white out all the F words in the book.
I remember
and then I would ask Tyler, like, what's a good substitute for this word?
For the F word.
And then you would come up with, you would have all, like, for every word you had a substitute. It was so great.
That's hilarious.
Change FU awesome. To forget you.
Yeah, forget you. Yeah, that's great. Let's see. So my, just kind of going back, I guess, pretty far is, like, I am, obviously, Tyler already mentioned this, I'm obsessed with zombies. In high school, I so loved them. And then I went on a mission to Argentina for a church. And when I got back, I'm like, I'm done with zombies. I, like, tossed out all my zombie stuff. And then I just had a breakup with this girl I was obsessed with. And then all of a sudden I was over at a friend's house, somebody I home taught, and he is like, oh, you need to forget her. Like, watch this episode of The Walking Dead with us. And it was the season finale of season 2. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to get into this again. And all of a sudden I started watching it. And I'm like, and then I couldn't stop. And then I went that night, I stayed up all night and I watched, I think, the first 2 seasons, and I didn't get any sleep.
That's hilarious.
And I was just like, I was hooked, I was obsessed. And then from there on, I was just, buying all the later seasons. And then I came across the graphic novel in a store at Barnes & Noble, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is based off a graphic novel. I'm like, I've never owned a graphic novel. I've always kind of wanted to, like, in the whole nerd culture, I've just wanted to own one. So I bought one as a joke. And then I'm like, well, I own it, I might as well read it. So after a couple months, I finally read it. And then I read the ending, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so much different than the show. And it's actually makes kind of more sense. And so,
a lot more sense.
So I'm like, at the very end, instead of Rick stabbing, he stabbed Shane, and then his son shot him. The son actually shot Shane in protection. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and so I went to Barnes & Noble and started buying more. And then I, now, as you well know, I'm the rest of the story. I've watched everything except these last couple seasons, like Grant said. After I met Negan.
Oh, isn't that frustrating? After
so
reading
different.
all about the Negan in the graphic novel, like, and seeing how he is and the legend he is, like, he's like honestly like your favorite, like, bad guy to be like rooting against almost. And and then you meet him on the show, and it's like I realize everybody likes Negan. Like Mick, who has never, our dear friend Mick, who has never read the graphic novels, only seen the show, loves Negan, but he's a shadow of what Negan is in the graphic novel.
Really? Because I feel that
absolutely.
same way. He's one of my favorite villains in the show.
In the graphic novel, he's this high-templed, super buff, again, twisted, but with morals,
right.
and a lot funnier, and frankly, a lot more vulgar. I mean, obviously, you're given a lot more freedom when it's a graphic novel as opposed to a TV series that you're. But he's
yes,
he really is.
Speaking of more freedom, what the governor does to Michonne in the graphic novel, you cannot replicate in the show.
Of course, there's a lot of things that for those reasons couldn't be replicated, but there are other things that absolutely should have been replicated.
Yes.
So
the whole debate. Remember, so Carol in the show has to decide whether or not to. This is one of the biggest changes that does not make sense to me at all.
That's Carol. I want to spend 15 minutes talking about Carol. Keep going, Jordan.
She decides to kill. Remember the twins? One of them kills her twin. Okay, in the book, there are 2 boys and they're twins, and one kills the other, and then it's a whole issue with the whole group.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's just Carol and I think Tyrese, right?
Yep, that's it.
And she just takes it upon herself to kill the girl.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, there was a debate throughout that episode. It was a moral quandary, and she was, like, feeling like, should I do this? Or did she just decide right away? But in the book, it was like, the whole group was like, what do we do? And they were having this big discussion, and then they put the kid away in a tent, and they're just like, and then we'll sleep on this, figure out what to do in the morning. And then Carl takes it upon himself because he's very young, and like, I'm going to make the decision here. And so he sneaks in and kills the kid. And so I know, it's just like,
and then Rick has to decide, Rick was kind of on the side of, we don't kill kids even if they do an innocent mistake like this. And then, or we do kill kids. He's not safe. I'm sorry. That's what it was. But then his son ends up being a kid who kills another kid because nobody else has the morals to do it. And then it's like, It's like, yikes. Now what do we do? And so I'm so glad you brought that up, Jordan, because I think The Walking Dead is ultimately, again, I don't love zombies like you do. That's not what got me into Walking Dead. I think more important for those who have not watched The Walking Dead than zombies is The Walking Dead is about human nature and what happens to...
And the humans end up being scarier than the zombies.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the decisions that good, faithful, like religious people make in the worst situations. And if you follow the story of The Walking Dead, it does a better job of following Rick as an individual and how he handles himself morally in these really difficult circumstances on his own, and then in a group, which once again, like that whole issue of, you know, a deranged kid killing another kid, that became a whole moral debate, and you saw very quickly what each character had to say, and it kind of represents a lot of the views in the world, some more conservative, some more liberal, mercy versus justice. You see that in a group, and then that group runs into more community. So then it's like, okay, individual, how does an individual interact with other individuals in a group? And then how does a group interact in a community setting, and then community against community? And the story follows that all the way, you know, very, very organized, and it's kind of cool. In the show, you don't necessarily get that, because in the show, I feel like they're just, I don't know, it's like they just want like quick twitch entertainment, so it's not as great.
Well, getting a little bit into the show, YMS does an amazing video of breaking down what happened with the studio and the director and everything, and why the show took such a different turn by season 2. And I'll say it really quick for anybody who doesn't want to watch that whole video, or if they have a problem with language, because he does swear a lot. So essentially what happened is Frank Darabont, amazing director. I mean, this guy has all these amazing movies under his belt. He did Shawshank Redemption, which is #1 on IMDb's top 100. He did The Green Mile. He did The Mist. Like, he's directed some really, really good movies. I believe he did Green Mile. I better double check that. But so he's still done like great adaptations of Stephen King books. And so he's really good at adapting material. And so he decided to take on this project, and he brought on all his friends. He just like had such passion and love for this project. I mean, it's not without its little quirks and flaws, but the first season's so good because he just like I said, channeled all this love and excitement that he had for this project. And so you can see that, and it's so good, and it just flowed so well. It was very tight. It was only 6 episodes. And then what happened was the studio realized how much more money they could make. And so Frank Darabont was like constantly fighting with the studio, and the studio just decided to drop him and hire somebody they could, you know, pay less. And then they decided to pay everybody less. And then they decided to stretch it out over longer episodes. They're like, we want more episodes, and then we want them longer, and we want more seasons and everything. And they're like, and you know, we'll hire a cheaper director and somebody who doesn't have very many good movies under his belt, because he's, you know, not as good, obviously. So if you watch season 1 and 2, like, there's a lot of filler, just people walking around, and a lot of the characters too. It's like anyways, that's a lot of what happens when a studio, you know, they see those dollar signs. They're like, we got a huge fan base, and we can save a ton of money and get more money if we just, you know, get rid of all the things. They don't realize like what made that first season so special. And he was already working on such a tight budget, and they wanted to cut that even more. It's just crazy.
Dang.
But he did it because he had a passion and love for it. So that in a nutshell is what happened. And you can, if you watch it seriously back to back, like season 1 and 2, you can see such a difference.
Oh yeah. Actually, you said, I even ventured to bet that season for season, the directors change hands a bit more. Yesenia has noticed that. Like, I think that there's been a couple of times where it's changed hands. Like, the zombies get a little more, there's even like some of them are CGI. Whereas in the first season, I mean, it's almost like dudes, they found some dudes on the street and put masks on them and face painted them. You know, like, it's like the special effects are just a lot different. The styles certainly change hands. But no, but my biggest issue with the show versus the graphic novel is I really feel like they followed some viewer sentiment on who they're going to kill, who are they going to continue, because they're killing off key characters like Andrea, who Andrea is a character that apparently viewers hate. And you know what? I've watched the show and I don't like Andrea very much, but you forget that in the graphic novel, Andrea is kind of like second in command to Rick, and like his go-to for a while, the best sharpshooter. They end up together. You know, Andrea's a big time character. And then characters like Carol, who are big time characters in the show, are psychopaths.
Oh, yeah.
That like Carol
crazy
very early on feeds herself to a zombie as suicide because she likes Tyrone or Tyrese. Is it Tyrese or Tyrone in the?
Yeah, Tyrese.
She likes Tyrese, and Tyrese is
hooks up
with Michonne, which never happens in the show, by the way. But Michonne is like super promiscuous in the graphic novel, so Carol kills herself.
She also hooks up with the priest.
Yeah.
And then the priest feels so guilty.
Serious?
He's like, oh, please forgive me. Like I should.
That's hilarious.
No, it's but Carol. So Carol's killed off, and so many people like Carol, and I actually have issues with Carol. Like I said, she
I don't like her in the show. She's so annoying.
But she has done some things, and you know the killing of the kid. Like I understand why that needs to be done, but the way Carol handled it, it was not a debate at all. Like Carol just knew what she was going to do. Whereas in the graphic novel, it was really interesting the back and forth that was taking place, and then something like Carl the kid and Rick watching the innocence of his child, just like it's gone now. We're in this new world, and like he's.
But Tyler, I felt like they tried to do that similar situation with the whole team saving that guy. That remember, so he lands on the fence and his leg is caught. They pull off his leg. They're like, we need to save this guy. Bring him back to the camp. And then they bring him back to camp, and they're deciding whether or not to kill him. And I'm like, why did you save him?
And then Carl says, "Do it, Dad." Like as you know, that's because Rick's going to do it. He follows, and then Carl comes in and says,
"Do it,
Dad." And that's when he realized. And I realized that they were going for the same effect, but in my opinion, it resonated a lot more in the graphic novel because you had no idea what was going on in Carl's mind until that happens. By the way,
in the show, they make him like a serial killer. He's like, "Yeah, do it."
Yeah. No, it's the graphic novel is really fun. Like it's super suspenseful. It's fun to read that because literally every page turn, you know how like in a movie you're thinking, oh man, don't go in there.
Oh yes.
There might be something and you're afraid something's going to jump out. The graphic novel does such a good job of like
the best
everything's
page
chill.
turner is when he flips the page and it's like man's got to eat. That scene when they meet the cannibals and he looks and he has no legs. That was one of the best page turners I've ever seen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Tainted meat. Yeah, or like somebody gets eaten, or Carl's eye gets shot. Like it's all these surprising things happen when you turn the page, and it's like whoa! It's just as suspenseful as watching the show. It's really cool. Jordan, every time. By the way, like the delivery on the tainted meat was no good in the show. And by the way, I don't think he was even a black man that did it in the graphic novel. I don't think it was, but it's every time.
That had his legs cut off. That it was actually who's the character who got ripped open right at the beginning? He was
Dale.
I can see his Dale. So Dale got his
Dale
legs
dies,
eaten.
and it's like what? And Dale I think was actually the first major death. That I remember when that happened, I was like, okay, this is not following protocol here. This is not following the story.
Tyler, so what happened with that character is he works with all of Frank Darabont's movies, and Frank Darabont was starting a new movie, and he was actually cast to be in that movie. And so he's like, I'm leaving the show. And I think kind of the studio was a little upset, and so they killed him off in like a really brutal, kind of unforgiving way. It was like he just walked out in the middle of a field, like looking at a deer or something, and it just like rips him open.
Dale is a family favorite, and they killed him off, and that's unbelievable. And I think they tried to replace him with Herschel, and Herschel is not. I don't think that Herschel is a character in the.
He isn't. He died by the governor in the book.
He died by the governor. Okay,
yeah.
He dies by the governor.
He dies very early.
I actually thought it was different because the one that gets his head chopped off very. Like
that was Tyrese.
That was Tyrese, and that hits home because Tyrese in the graphic novels is like Rick's go-to guy. He's not this pacifist, internal struggle like man. Like he's a man's man, great leader. Like he's actually one of your favorite characters until he dies. And so, anyways, I've got issues with those subtle differences. The only thing that's different about the show that I actually like is Daryl. So I remember the Daryl character I watch all the time, and I think to myself, like
Robert Kirkman even said he's like I wish I had come up with that character, from the book because it's such a great character.
He's a great character, but I think that he does what like Tyrese did while he was alive, and then some of your favorite characters. So he's the most sensible part to me because since his story is very undocumented.
I even liked his brother Merle. I mean,
Merle was a great addition.
But by the time he died, I was like, he kind of redeemed himself. I thought he went out kind of great.
He did. But Jordan, the point is, like when I was talking about the tainted meat episode. That man's delivery of tainted meat is no comparison to the first time that you showed me that page and were reading it out loud. I still remember your voice every time I hear tainted meat. You're eating tainted meat.
Oh, okay. And then Rick being the most bad A when he's in the dark, and in the book he says they've effed with the wrong people. In the TV show he says they've screwed with the wrong people.
I know. Like it doesn't resonate as much without the F words, of course.
But it was so good though. It's just like that moment you're like, oh, I got chills. Like these guys have screwed with the wrong guy. Yeah. Because of his progression, you guys have mentioned it already. Rick's progression over the course of this whole show is really cool.
Oh yeah.
Like, he starts as this really, square police officer.
Right.
Great guy.
And it's so cool to see the struggle that he has to try and hold on to that. And he wants to keep that going on, but like, he just has to make decisions where he's like either I'm going to die or my family or the people I'm in charge of are going to die.
Well, I think he kind of felt like he was becoming himself again when he was back in the town. He's like, maybe we can live in a civilized society. Until he beats that guy to a pulp. And then he turns and he's got the blood on his face. That is my other favorite quote.
You calling me crazy?
Me? Me?
Who? So what? That's a good question. When do you think? Because I certainly sense that now. Like, it's interesting that Rick in season 1, or maybe it's season 2, I can't remember. But he has to face off with Shane. Shane has gone the complete like survival of the fittest. You do what it takes to survive. Forget morals. I mean, that's why he comes at Rick and his wife and says, hey, like your husband's not gonna live to stick around, and because he doesn't have what it takes to keep you safe, him safe, because he's like he's got too many morals. Basically, I'm the only person here that's corrupt enough to do what it takes to be a leader and keep everybody alive. But I feel like that changes where Rick becomes very Shane-like, and I'm trying to think of in the graphic novel. I don't know if I can point to any one instant where it's like this is where Rick went from this to ultimately what Shane was. But in the show that we're watching, I feel like the way Rick even talks with a deeper voice now, like it's like he's trying to talk like he's Batman. And do we know the moment where Rick goes to the dark side here, where Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader? Because in the graphic novel it's very subtle, but what about in the movies or in the show?
Well, that's the problem. Is there's moments where I'm like, oh, whoa, what's going on with Rick right now?
Yeah.
And I just wonder if that's something that they wrote in. Because I was just getting at like some of the characters like interaction between each other. Like we'll get back to Rick in just a second. I just want to mention really quick, when you were talking about that, I was thinking of him and Shane, because you mentioned Shane, and just the whole issue. Once Shane died, like his wife being upset at him in the show made no sense. Like, they just turned his wife into a total B. And so when she was, like, haunting him, I'm like, yes, this is a nightmare, because she is the worst.
Well, she doesn't even die the right way in the show. I mean, in the show, she successfully gives childbirth. Or, no, she dies during childbirth. But then the child goes on. But in the graphic novel, childbirth goes fine. They have Judith, and then Judith and the mother get shot when the governor comes in with his army to shoot to blaze the jail. So like that's another key thing that I was just like kind of disappointed about.
And the governor goes out in the most epic way, Grant, in the book. So the governor
kind of this is Sparta.
It is. So Grant, one of the ladies, so the governor, you know how he convinces the town to essentially go and attack the people, and so he manipulated them. So in the town goes and they start unloading on them. And then one of the ladies, she's like, oh my gosh, I just shot a woman with her baby. And she turns and looks at the governor and says, like, this is your fault. And she shoots him, and he shoots him in the face. And then she kicks him into the zombies, like Tyler said, like a This Is Sparta kind of thing.
That's
so
awesome.
Epic.
The governor I had issues with. Like, the governor is a Jesus-looking dude. Like, he's got a beard and like a mullet. He looks a lot more sinister in the graphic novel than he does.
Wait, he has a beard in the graphic novel? I think
maybe he doesn't have a beard. He just has the mullet. He just has the mullet.
He has got a. Maybe he has like a goatee or something, but oh my gosh. And Grant, when he first meets Rick, he says, welcome to our town, and he chops off Rick's hand.
Yeah, Rick is not supposed to have both hands in after season 3.
Fudge?
How is that for an introduction to the governor? So in the show, they kind of make it like, Toy Story 3, where they meet the teddy bear and they think he's good, and then find out later he's evil.
Right.
Like in the book, it's like, no, boom, welcome to our town. And he's like, ah! And then I don't want to talk too much about this, but he does stuff to Michonne, and then Michonne gets so mad at him, and when she gets him, Grant, like, I'll just bleep this out, but she takes a spoon, Grant, and pulls out his eyeball with that spoon.
That's freaking hilarious.
He's got a handlebars mustache, by the way. It's a
Oh yeah, okay. I figured it was something, but not. Yeah, when you said beard, I was picturing like Herschel.
Yeah, no, you're right. Or Jesus. And that's the other thing is that like, so some of my favorite characters I remember, not all of them. Like it's a shame because I remember the impact the graphic novel had, but like I was talking about this with with Mick and Rebecca the other day, and they were like really into the show. I was like, Yesenia, we should watch this, and they were talking about these characters. Like, I can't even remember the characters anymore. But it didn't take very long for me to just do a little bit of homework to start remembering stuff and catching on to the differences, which I'm grateful for. But oh man, why was I bringing that up? I was bringing up the fact that I forgot my point, guys.
Well, you're fine. While you're thinking about that, so Rick, I think a couple moments in the show, I feel like he kind of flipped back and forth between thoughts, because you said what moment was he like different. I mean, I just feel like at times he's like, oh, this is democracy, and then he's like, no, this is not a democracy. I'm making the decisions now, and I'm like, oh, what's?
And Rick's soft spot, I feel like the whole time was his family. Like I feel like that's where you see huge double standards. And again, the critical moment where you see that, because again, Rick is like supposed to be that's why they chose a sheriff, like somebody who mercy meets justice, like it's keep the rules, do the right thing, selfless. The utilitarian thing. A policeman is gonna take a bullet for a group of people. And so that's who you have going into this, like a sparkling sheriff, with excellent morals. But then you see those morals start to slip up in certain places, and in some cases it's to survive, in some cases it's to save the whole group. But a lot of the time it's because it directly impacts his wife or Carl. There's a part where, again, the part where the group is talking about, do we kill this kid who is deranged and just killed his brother? Carl, he's totally, the sheriff is totally leaning on the side of, hey, he killed somebody, he's not safe. We probably need to do something about this.
Tyler, I need to know your thoughts about Carl. In the book, he's a bad A, Grant.
Yes.
Like, the scene when he's hiding inside and attacks Negan's men and just starts unloading with an AK, like, dude, he is so cool in the book.
He is, but he's sort of dorky in the show, right? You got to hand it to him. It's tough to choose a child actor when I don't know how young he was in season 1, with the projection and the understanding that he's going to be a bad A, but they should have given the kid a haircut at least. I mean, like that.
I agree. He looks so bad.
But it's because in the book he didn't get a haircut. But the point is, when Carl kills the kid who killed the kid.
No, but Tyler, the show, I think, kind of adapted to his long hair, because in the book he had short hair, but then the show started to, I feel like, did it not surpass, but Carl's character started growing up too quickly in the show, and in the book he wasn't. So they skipped ahead and then had him with long hair. So I think they added that in, because I don't know if Robert Kirkman liked his long hair, but I was like, oh no.
No, Carl in general is just not like he has more of like a slicked back do. Like he looks more like menacing than, anyways. But no, my point is, then when it directly impacts Carl, then Rick is like, hey, like, I'm not killing my kid.
Yeah.
I realize Carl just killed this kid, but I'm going to keep this silent, like nobody's knowing about this. And you
that's right, he does.
You kind of see that in the show when like Herschel watches Carl kill, a kid that's approaching him and seemed to be handing his gun over, and Walker said he shot that boy down. He wasn't defending anything. So you see how Rick's morals quickly, I mean, they're tested, and he doesn't always make the right decision. But I think in the graphic novel, he does a much better job of, I mean, by the time he's in charge of that community, like the Alexandria community, I mean, you feel like you're not dealing with a madman anymore. I'm watching up to season 7, and I feel like he's still like kind of a madman. Like, it's like, I'm surprised that these guys are so confident that Rick's going to lead them, get them through this zombie apocalypse. Because he seems pretty ruthless, and he'll mow down anybody in front of him, and you don't necessarily sense that in the graphic novel. At least I didn't.
Well, I mean, there were still the most crucial moments, I feel like, and they kept that in the show, which was the scene when they brutally killed, and they, remember, Tyler, in the book they didn't even show it, they just showed scenes of blood, and that they totally dismembered and killed those cannibals.
Yeah.
And that was very interesting, because they showed a lot of stuff in the book, but it was interesting that they decided not to show that. So that critical moment when they kind of realized, when they saw those people lose their humanity, they kind of, I don't know if you could say they matched by becoming monsters themselves, but they were kind of killed them and realized, like, and they kind of, there was a moment, I think they were kind of looking at each other like what have we become, or what has the world become, I guess. So
yeah. There's a scene in, it's actually season 7, episode 1, where Negan beats, he kills Glenn.
Oh, yes.
He kills Abraham, which by the way,
Abraham.
I felt like in graphic novel I loved Abraham. I didn't, and I don't like him very much in the show.
In the show, I'm like, take him over anyone else, please. Like, I was so glad he was the one who
and
died.
so in the show, why did he kill multiple people? Because in the book, it was like, you kill 2 of ours, we're killing 2 of yours, right?
Yeah, in the show, so he kills one, and then it was something like Daryl was like
jumps out.
talking or something.
Yeah, Daryl jumps out.
He tells him to shut up. He's like, shut up, or otherwise, like, I'm gonna do something.
And he says he's a man of his word, and so he's got to take a second life, and that's why he took Glenn's.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's why he did it.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
you
he
almost-
still have, I guess, rules. But that just seems kind of crazy.
Yeah, sort of. It was kind of weak.
Yeah, because in the book, it was
I was
like,
so pissed, dude.
because you took a life, I have to take a life too.
Yeah,
like,
an eye for an eye, 2 eyes for 2 eyes. Yeah, and then in the as you're watching it in the season, like I suppose somebody who doesn't know the outcome that Glenn's going to die in the show but does know in the book would say, oh, so Glenn's going to live here, but no, Daryl missteps, and he says, hey, I said you can't misstep anymore, and he did, so I'm gonna kill him. So he does, but no. What I was bringing up, I was bringing up that there's that scene when Negan kills those 2 people, and then he takes Rick through an RV, makes him look for his axe. Like, he sees these really twisted people who are doing really bad things, and then Negan's crew drives away, the crew's getting in the car, and then one zombie comes out of the forest. And Rick just looks at the zombie, doesn't do anything, just kind of looks around. He's clearly like almost calmed down. He's like not afraid anymore because the real monsters have left. Whereas like it's like that to me is the moment where The Walking Dead is saying, okay, the zombies are not what you fear anymore.
Right.
They're not the monsters. The monsters are this Negan and crew who just left. The people aren't even afraid of zombies anymore at that point. This whole time, there has been fear of The Walking Dead. And I'm not trying to like I realize there's a show out there called Fear of the Walking Dead, but there was an actual fear
trash.
of The
It's
Walking
so
Dead.
bad.
And that's and for seasons, that's all they're scared of. But then that's the episode where it's like, okay, there's a shift, there's a paradigm shift here where The Walking Dead, like we can live with, we can manage this. That the real monsters is Negan, and so that's a really powerful scene to me, and that becomes very clear in The Walking Dead as you watch the graphic novels again, especially when it's group amongst group. It's like the zombies are almost a side story. It's the folks, the communities they're bumping up against that's the real issue. So
yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, the book's Grant. I want to get Grant hooked on it, but
Well, and that's why like I want to finish the show just so that I can go to something even better instead of like, reading the books and being disappointed with the show. So.
I realize I'm, and this is for anybody watching the show. If you've read the graphic novels and you haven't seen the show, if you watch the show, it's going to be suspenseful because again, it doesn't follow the storyline. People are dying when they're supposed to be living when they're supposed to be dying, and vice versa. If you've watched the show but you go into the graphic novels, I realize I'm spoiling a lot of things for you here, Grant. But if otherwise,
No, it's all good. I'll forget it and I'll enjoy reading it anyway. So.
Yeah, it will be just as suspenseful. But there are a couple key characters that are being introduced this season, like Jesus. I would like to know everybody's favorite characters, by the way. Show in the graphic novel if you've seen it. But
yeah.
Jesus is certainly a favorite character of mine. He's so different, in my opinion. But I think he's a beloved character in both. But King Ezekiel, it's laughable when you meet King Ezekiel in the show. At least that first episode. I like it when he meets with Carol and he drops his character, speaks normally, kind of explains why he's doing his thing. But he is kind of over the top. And then Abraham and Tyrese are like my 2 biggest letdowns because I love those characters. It was heartbreaking when both of those people died because I felt like they were really good sidemen to Rick. And so anyways, these characters are quite different. The only character who's about the same as I expected, I wouldn't even say Eugene is the same because Eugene looks the part, but like I was picturing this kind of scientific nerdy voice, not this Tennessee Southern drawl,
Yeah.
Southern top hat, Tennessee top hat wearing folk. I didn't expect that. So I'm a little disappointed with the way these characters are turning out because when I read it, I just thought they were better. So my favorite character, graphic novel. I love Tyrese before he died, and Jesus and King Ezekiel were 2 favorites of mine, and then Abraham I would also put up there. I am so embarrassed now because I've told people like Abraham's awesome, and people who've watched the show probably think I'm like a jerk or something, because he just is. It's not the same story,
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, yeah, me loving. I always forget her name. Gosh dang it. Who does?
Andrea.
Andrea. So when I tell
Andrea's
people I
a great
love
character.
Andrea, and they're like, she is the worst character in the show.
Yeah.
suicidal at times, like really holds up
Yeah,
the
she's
group.
like, oh, that whole dilemma. Give her the knife. She won't do it. She won't go through with it. And it's like, you want to take that risk?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, jeez. And then she was mad at Dale for saving her life.
Yeah. No, and Dale dying off. Dale was a favorite character of mine.
Oh yeah, I loved him in the book.
Daryl is kind of the equivalent of what most people think Herschel is, but like, he was kind of that moral compass that wanted to stay steady the whole time.
Yeah, Herschel didn't really have a big part in the book.
No, he didn't.
I mean, yeah, he's kind of kept to himself. Grant, do you want to say your favorite characters really quick and maybe a favorite part from the show?
Yeah, so I'd say my favorite character was Glenn. I don't know, he just kind of seemed like the one kid that you think should not survive being a pizza delivery guy, and I just love how he's kind of he was that kid who was there like
from the get-go.
Yeah, like helping Rick in the tank the very first season, helping it kind of helps him get in with the group where he finds his family again.
Totally does.
And then just like, I don't know, and then him hooking up, like you wanted him so bad to hook up with Maggie, and then so I don't know, so I loved seeing his character develop, and like he kind of stepped up where he could, to be a leader where he could. And so I love Glenn. And then Daryl's probably my second favorite. I just love Rick because like you get to see his character like develop so much throughout the show without him dying off.
He gives 110%. I mean,
right, yeah.
You got to give him. I give him props for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I'd say Negan is probably after that. So because Negan was another thing too, was like the season 6 and season 7 was kind of one of those things that like my roommates were watching it with me, so we were talking about it all the time. And like my cousin, we would send Negan memes to each other and stuff.
Yes,
so
memes are the best.
Yeah.
Dude, I seriously spent hours on the Facebook fan page and just so funny. People when they would just post all these comments, they're hilarious. The memes are so funny. Like that one where Rick gets closer and closer to Carl. And he just like gets closer and he's like talking to him, telling him jokes and stuff. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm excited to read the book. Because I think, did you send me the first issue, Jordan? Is that what the graphic novel is? Did you send me the first?
I think so, and I'll.
And then because then doesn't it change like the artist? Because like the first artist.
Oh, that's the other thing you were complaining about. I do agree with that, Tyler. We forgot to mention that. So after the first, sorry, it's not issue. So there's issue volume. So after the first volume, it changes from Tony to Charlie, and Charlie's he's a good artist, but I personally,
it's just way different than. I love the first one.
Yeah, Tony's work is
and amazing. I got used to that, and then it switched, and I was like, I don't like this as much.
I thought that the artists rotate every issue. There's like 3 of them. Like there's like
they brought on other people that helped do the tones and stuff, but the main artist is Charlie. So but from the first volume, Tyler, it was Tony, and then they hired on somebody else.
I could have swore that like every issue it was like in one guy drew a certain way and another guy drew a certain way, and they would go back and forth, and they drew like the characters similar enough you could recognize them, but it was like definitely different styles.
No.
You're sure about that?
Yeah, I'm positive. Because the art is one of my favorite things in the book. So unbelievably cool. And Grant, like Grant said, Tony, oh my gosh, his work. I do love Charlie's work, don't get me wrong, but gosh dang, that art was so cool from the first volume. But Tyler, they did bring on other people that did other touch-ups, but there was only one artist, and it's Charlie. From this, starting at volume 2, because from the first one, it's Tony.
And are they all in black and white?
Yes, which is actually, it was a creative choice, and I think it turned out. And Grant, this is the same guy that did Invincible. I think we already talked about this, but
what? No way.
Yeah,
like the story or just the art?
Robert Kirkman. He wrote The Walking Dead, and he also wrote Invincible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, right. I know, 2 of my favorite series.
So good.
I cannot wait for season 2 of Invincible.
I know, me too.
Did we miss any really good parts from the show, Grant? I feel like we mentioned most of them.
Yeah. Because, like, it was so hard because, like, my problem is season 8 was an entire build-up. Nothing happened. It was all just a build-up for season 9. I was like, what was the point of this season?
Yeah.
And I just felt like a lot of those seasons, just like, a lot of things were drawn out unnecessarily.
Yes.
A lot of the side stories were not interesting at all. Anything with Carol was so freaking annoying, dude.
Yeah, well, and they had like these little tiny golden moments when they brought on Everybody Hates Chris with that scene with the moving set. This was a scene that wasn't in the book, and it was when they were stuck in that, what do you call those rotating doors?
The revolving door?
Yeah.
Yeah, revolving door. When he gets stuck on one side and the other guy's on the other, and they've got and there's zombies on the sides.
Yeah.
That was an amazing, I gotta admit, that was a great add to the show. I'm like, why can't they do more stuff like this? That's amazing.
They did.
Like,
They did have some ads in the show. I don't want to discount the show. Again, I think both the show and the graphic novel are actually pretty good. I'm glad that this time around. I can't remember why the first time around I stopped watching the show. I'm not much of a show guy, so it probably doesn't take much for me to lose interest. But it's still a good suspenseful show. But you're right. It's there, and there are a few parts like the revolving door scene, which make it, which make it pretty outstanding. But it's
or adding Daryl to the story, like just little things like that. I'm like, oh dang, like this is keeping me
even
in
Merle's
grip,
story was really cool. The fact that
Merle?
like they,
Yes.
Merle's completely fictional. Like he was but I thought that was a really cool first kind of like, not first. There were obviously some other ethical issues along the way, but that was an ethical dilemma of, hey, I just handcuffed a guy to a roof. Am I going to leave him there where he's going to die?
Yes.
Or do we sacrifice ourselves to go back and save him? I mean, it did take him forever to get out of that tank as it was. So,
I love when he dropped that key. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right down the drain.
Oh, yeah.
The season finale of season 2 was good. I mean, that when they finally attacked the farm, the zombies, that was fun. Kind of overran it. But yeah, season 1 is amazing. So, I mean, if anybody should watch it. And I think that's what hooked a lot of people. I mean, it hooked a lot of people. And now people are obsessed with zombies. Like, there's a huge, I feel like there's such a big following because of the show, which kind of upsets me a little bit because I'm a bit of a hipster. I love zombies. I mean, I've loved them for the longest time. And now that it's popular, I'm like, oh no.
How do you feel about, I would like to know, how do we feel, does the scene where they find the doctor who tells them that they're all infected, or whispers that in Rick's ear?
Oh, when they go to the CDC?
Yeah. Does that happen in the novel?
No.
I was going to say, I didn't think it did. Is there any...
There was no explanation to how they came about. I think that was one of your questions.
And do you like that, or do you dislike that?
I don't mind it. Like, from what this is based on, which is George A. Romero's, his best explanation was that something came from space, and it was some radiation or something. It's just like a comet or something, and so... It was started to wake the dead, but I might have to go back and rewatch that. People are going to attack me and say, that's not how it was.
Yeah. I just feel like a lot of zombie movies, it's all about finding patient one. How did it happen? Just about everything I've watched with zombies, it's kind of, that's what they want to figure out. And
yeah, or it's a virus. No, that's been one.
Yeah, but I just feel like this show never did that.
Well, and Tyler, they were going to actually explore that, and they were going to have show a whole side story of the military and how they got overrun, because one of the actors that was in the tank in the very first episode that got the zombie that attacked Rick, and then he shot, and then his ears were ringing. Like, that character was that they were actually going to show his story and how they got overrun, how the city got overrun. And then the studio, like I said, cut budget instead, and they took it a whole different direction.
I hope that have they done an episode like the origin story of Negan?
No, and I don't think they will. But I mean, as far as I'm aware, I haven't watched the last couple seasons, but there is one episode now that we're talking about things that are good. They did a spin-off, just one episode standalone. Do you remember this, Grant, where that guy took in, I can't remember the black guy's name, but he has the stick. I think so. And yeah, and he takes him in. He doesn't. Does he kidnap him or something? And then they become friends.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah,
that was a great.
The guy who teaches him whatever form of martial art that is.
Yeah, I thought that was such a good episode. I'm like, wow. Personally, I loved it.
That was a great story. Yeah. And listening what he battled with, and his philosophy was that all life is good, and including this criminally insane man who killed his family, and who he locked up and watched starve over the course of 42 days or something like that, and
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, that guy's the same actor in the Zodiac and Fargo.
In Zodiac, and which I thought of you when I saw
Really?
that, Jordan. Yeah, it's a really cool episode. That's sweet.
Yeah, I admired that. So whoever wrote that, I mean, props to you, because that wasn't in the graphic novel, and that was amazing. So they're like that, and the revolving door. Just when they had moments like that, or seeing Daryl, I was like, oh my gosh, like really well. And I was also curious, Tyler, when you met the governor and he wasn't crazy, were you thinking maybe they're writing him as a different character, or did you just know right away he was?
I knew he was bad news. There's no way you can make the governor be a good person, but I was surprised by how clean cut he was. That's not what I expected.
Grant, was there any other thoughts or anything else you wanted to share about the show? Like, I know you put Rick in your top 10 actors of all time.
That was more as a joke, but because I knew you guys would rip on it, but I just wanted to bring that up because it would be funny. Because, I do think he's a great actor, but no, there's millions of actors that I would choose over him, but I just thought that would be funny. But apparently, I mean, spoiler alert, but I forgot that Carl dies in the show. Yeah, he dies in the show. It's kind of dumb. So the Saviors attack Alexandria, and Carl gets shot or something, or something happens to him, or blown up, where he starts bleeding, and so they go underground in the sewers or something, or some kind of underground thing under Alexandria, and then they all meet there, and Carl is dying, and then he ends up dying, and
that's crazy because he's the one who makes it to the he's at the very last issue is of him, so that's crazy.
Right.
They changed
Who dies?
So don't spoil it unless you don't want to know, right? Because you remember they changed a lot of people who lives, who dies.
I watched this, but I totally forgot.
Do you want to wait to find out though, Tyler?
They killed off Carl?
Do you want to know? Do you want to keep it a secret?
That's fine.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Carl dies.
Man.
Maybe we shouldn't have said anything. Sorry.
No, well, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just that's very surprising to me because last issue, which by the way, the last issue came as a surprise too. None of us knew that was coming.
Tyler and I thought we were no, you can't end it. There's so much more you can tell.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I'm going to say on this podcast, for this, we're talking about The Walking Dead, but this goes for every show that I love. I really think that side stories and prequels are always better than sequels. In just about every movie I've watched, sometimes sequels do okay, but origin stories are the way to go. I think of that about superheroes. I think that about video games that I've played. When somebody comes up with prequels, you can almost never go wrong because it's you're just giving further character development. You're going in the past, and then it's just the way that it, and then you've got it. The way that it ends, it's got to end where the story begins, which is in the story you love, which is in the right place. I'm talking about Rogue One Star Wars. Rogue One Star Wars is really cool the way that they wrap it up because it wraps up the way that the Last Hope season 4 or episode 4 starts. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because that's why I love the Negan story issue. It's not a sequel. It's not this is what happens after The Walking Dead because those almost never go the way you want. But the prequels and the side stories are much appreciated. So whenever The Walking Dead does that, including that episode that you're talking about where Morgan gets trained, those are really cool stories. But I've just noticed that sequels, it's kind of a dice roll, and I would even say most of the time I don't love sequels very much, but whatever shows come out with prequels or side stories, it's X-Men First Class. I mean, whatever it is, I almost love those stories more.
Well, but what they tried to do because I don't know what they tried to do with Fear the Walking Dead, but that did not land very well.
Oh, it's a side story, yeah. I know. When you were saying that, Tyler, I'm thinking of all these movies that are really bad prequels.
Suck.
Really? What?
Insidious Chapter 3, which is technically a prequel to the series.
I could care less about Insidious, but
and then Cube Zero, which is also a prequel to the Cube movies, which is horrible.
That's also the whole Cube series sucks.
Yeah, but the first one's fun. So, anyways, and then Spider-Man 2 is, I think, way better than Spider-Man 1. I mean, I just think it's such a great one with Doc Ock. So I don't know. I'm not saying. I'm just saying yes. When you're talking generally, I would say you're correct, but I was just thinking of specific ones.
I'm sure you can think of it. You can think of exceptions.
Yeah.
But that's If I were The Walking Dead and I felt a hunch if I were the writer here, then if I were Kirkman, then what I would do is I probably wouldn't say, okay, let's start the Chronicles of Carl now. Well, you can't in the show apparently. but like you can go, but like, you know, so, but I think origin story issues to some of these characters that we, you know.
If you like a good adaptation of Robert Kirkman's work, Tyler, Invincible's amazing. I don't know if you're gonna like it. You probably won't, but it's amazing.
What's Invincible?
So it's on Amazon Prime. It's also written by Robert Kirkman, but it's an adaptation and it stays a cartoon. So it's amazing cast. Actually, Glenn is the main voice for the Glenn in the TV show is the main voice of the main superhero kid. And Tyler, just watch it to the very end of the first episode, because I know you're going to be like, this is not great. But by the end of the first episode, you're going to be like, oh, and then you'll know what kind of a show it is. Okay. So just give it one episode, and if you don't
like, very clear picture.
and if you don't have that feeling, and then you'll know too, you'll be like, oh, okay, I see why Jordan likes this, and I also see why it's Robert Kirkman. But you'll figure out what the tone is by the end of the first episode. So anybody that's a fan of Walking Dead, highly recommend Invincible. And then I believe, I don't speak on Tyler's behalf, but I think we both really highly recommend the book. If you have watched the show, and if you like the show, then your eyes will be open to a whole new amazing story written by Robert Kirkman. So highly recommend the book.
I recommend the graphic novel. I'd also recommend the show.
Well, at least the first season. Oh my gosh, the first season of The Walking Dead is amazing.
I recommend the show too. I got through some of those seasons that are a little slower moving, and I feel like this show really picks up in season 6 and 7, and even parts of 5, and so 4 was actually like really like it's just the first couple seasons. It's like when they get to jail, things don't go the way I don't feel like they make it as fast moving as they did in the graphic novel, but once you get through that, the rest of the show is great. But you can't enjoy season 6 or 7 like without knowing what happened, otherwise you're just lost, because I love the suspense of just not knowing who's dead next. I feel like in the issue they did a really good job of killing somebody off every issue. I don't think there's a single issue that came out where somebody doesn't die or something like absolutely just shocking doesn't happen. And and
in the show too, it's like you know who's gonna die, because it's like they'll give that character a build up in the beginning of the episode. You're like, oh well, this character's gonna die.
Yeah,
that's true.
They'll give him some backstory so you can feel that emotional weight.
So what are some recommendations for? I did this last time when we were talking about. We already mentioned Invincible. I just watched the first episode, Tyler. I just want to hear your thoughts after the end. What about graphic novels? I do have my black edition of Death Note right here, which you read right to left. You know.
Oh, nice.
Is it called a manga?
I don't know. I don't know my Japanese terms for for their comic books, but
have you started it already? Is it different than the show?
It's a little more detailed. It's a little more detailed than the.
And do they have a list of all the rules in the book of the Death Note? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. So like the pages, like how like in the anime, like they have like the kind of
the beginning pauses. Of each episode shows like a
screen, or pauses between moments. Like they'll have like snapshots. So those are actually like included in here. Same thing between like chapters or whatever. Cool. But this is an example of a graphic novel that I'm pretty sure is based off of the anime, not the other way around. So
interesting.
I think that's the way it is. I doubt that this was made first. So
really, because I feel like with books and graphic novels, usually
they
usually come before the shows.
Okay, I'm gonna Google this.
Yeah, because you're actually talking to the biggest. So Tyler's the one who introduced us to it, but I got Grant. Yeah, so Tyler introduced it to me.
Dang, that's awesome.
And then I got so hooked, and then I introduced it to you and Cameron next.
We oh my gosh, we just ate.
You were so hesitant too. You guys are like, anime.
Well, I know, because before this we had not watched anything, and then the only other anime I've seen is One Punch Man, and I think that's it. But yeah.
Well, those are the best too.
You're right. Yeah. It was manga or whatever before the show.
Yeah, that's usually the case. So Tyler, if you like Death Note, maybe try One Punch Man. If you're kind of sick of superhero movies and you're like, I'm done, then don't recommend it. But if you like superhero movies and you don't mind, something that essentially
I don't love superhero movies. I don't love superhero movies or comics. Like I'm so done with superhero.
But it pokes fun at superhero movies. It's kind of a satire.
I think One Punch Man does a really good job of the main character is very different, and it's kind of ironic.
Okay, I'm thinking about the Watchmen too. Like I after going through this Walking Dead experience again, I actually recently was looking at, okay, what graphic novels can I pick up, maybe in another language or something, since I like learning other languages, and just coupling that with something like a new graphic novel series that I would like. And there's Watchmen is always in the top, graphic novels. They're mostly hero graphic novels, and it's tough because even The Walking Dead, like I said, I never would have picked this up if, Jordan, you wouldn't have been so persistent, and I didn't love you so much over the course of, Jordan, from the time that we met to the time I actually got to the graphic novels, what was that, 6 years? That's kind of what it took before I got into this. And so, like, I'm seeing these graphic novel titles, and I'm just like, there's no way. Well, and
after I read The Walking Dead, I'm like, I need to find another graphic novel. There needs to be something out there like this, because it's so good.
Grant, same thing with you. I learned about Death Note when I was in Brazil. A Brazilian missionary talked to me about it, and I was like, that's kind of a weird story, and I can't even remember what prompted me to like go ahead and watch it, but I ended up liking it a lot, but that the concept seems very foreign. I'm just afraid I'm going to pick up some graphic novel, read through it, and just be like, that was a waste of my time, and every once in a while, I've gotten to more books now where, there was a period where I was trying to read a book a week, and not every book I picked up I loved. It was like, some of these are...
Well, The Boys is a really fun show. Maybe the graphic novel would be fun because it's the show is based off a graphic novel.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Grant, a bunch of changes, so check it out. Homelander is actually... And Starlight, or what's the Nazi
Starlight,
girl?
Yeah.
She's actually...
I can't remember.
This guy looks like Negan from The Boys.
She's actually a dude in the book. And so, yeah... And it also explains too, Homelander abused, what's the Aquaman?
The Deep.
And which explains why he's so, I'm actually surprised they decided not to have that
hilarious
in the show, because it explains why he mistreats other women and stuff.
Right.
Very interesting.
This guy looks like Negan on The Boys.
Homelander?
Like whoever the main guy is.
The Boys?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one. So yeah, The Boys is great.
Oh, that's a Butch.
Invincible is also really good.
Yeah, Butch looks like Negan.
Oh, Butch, yeah. You might like it. And there's a TV series on Amazon Prime. It's really good, but there's a lot of stuff in it.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is repeatedly in there. Like there's just Batman's in there. I don't want to read Batman, but there's stuff like this I really like. I like the stuff where people can die off. There's it's more than just one character falling around. Okay, what's Batman going to do this time? What's Batman going to do that time? Because this is not a novel about Rick Grimes. Like I said, there's a very small portion of the series where it's pretty focused on him because he hasn't found a group yet. But
speaking of Disney not killing off any characters, have you guys seen the newest Spider-Man? I don't want to spoil it if you haven't.
Yes.
Have you seen it, Tyler?
But Yesenia doesn't like Spider-Man, so...
Oh, really?
No.
Interesting.
No. So people are dying off.
Well, no. I'm saying Disney doesn't take risks. They won't kill off anybody. They're actually reviving characters. Nobody dies, Tyler.
They'll do anything to bring him back.
Okay, well, Tyler, do you want to plug where people can find you on social media?
Yeah, so Ty Hux on Instagram. I'm the Jinja Ninja on YouTube. I think that's where you can find me if you're interested. We're good for fish or fun or fast stuff or fitness. We got all kinds of things that start with F on my channel.
And then before we wrap up, are there any shows or movies you guys have seen or looking forward to?
I really liked King Richard. I saw King Richard recently.
Oh, did you see that? I want to see that. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, Yesenia really liked King Richard. It's a lot of fun to watch Will Smith. What I'm looking forward to. Yeah, I'm not sure what movies are coming out yet anymore.
Yeah, I saw the new Spider-Man's that's out. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that.
Really?
We can talk about that later. I loved it, but I felt like they were all your favorite things you love, and I'm like, oh, curse you.
Yeah.
And literally a lot of it was why did they bring this character in? I'm pretty sure it's only because they wanted to be oh, recognize this guy? Oh, yeah, you recognize this guy? And I was
the lizard guy did nothing the whole show.
Oh, yeah. Okay, lizard guy. Let's talk about the reporter guy. What's his name? He did nothing.
Jameson?
Eugene. Yeah, Jonas Jameson.
Eugene.
Yeah, sorry, Eugene. That mullet. No, a ton of characters. I was just what was Daredevil? I was why? It was fun seeing
that was
him.
interesting.
I was I saw
How'd you
people in
do
the
that?
crowd.
I'm a good lawyer.
People in the crowd were clapping and like, yeah,
Really?
wow!
That's annoying.
They were going crazy every time something happened. I was like, oh, another character everybody recognizes, and the crowd went nuts. I was like, oh boy.
By the way, speaking of Eugene, I realize that we're kind of done talking about The Walking Dead, but the
No.
Walking Dead Eugene, there's just moments where like where Eugene's like, I must speak to. I must
to get to Washington.
They're like Eugene kind of falls in love with this woman in one of the communities. I can't remember what it was. Does he end up with Rosita in the show?
Well, no, Abraham's like juggling two chicks. He's like in the book.
Oh, he likes Sasha in the show.
Yeah, which Sasha I don't even know if she's a real character in the graphic novel. But I think I read somewhere that Rosita chooses Eugene to be like the father of her baby or something like that. Does that make sense? She's killed off in the graphic novel. She's one of the there's one issue in the graphic novel that like,
oh no, you're gonna mention this. I left open the page.
Yeah. Oh, this is actually kind of a funny story. We probably should insert this somewhere.
No, go. It's out.
But yeah, so like again, the graphic novel is like seriously suspenseful. It's a page turning. Every page turn, you're not safe. Nobody's safe. You know that.
Well, and we were using a digital book.
We were using a digital book, so like every time you press that next page. So Jordan would very frequently get to the issues before I did, and so there's in one specific issue, they kill off half of the beloved characters.
The people that wear skin over their faces?
All the Skinwalkers?
Skinwalkers,
The Skinwalkers kill off half of the beloved characters. And you know that they're dead because in one or two pages you see a bunch of heads on sticks. They've decapitated the guys and they've put their heads on a bunch of sticks. Jordan failed to click just a simple button once you get to the end of an issue that says take me back to the first page, that way like no spoilers. and so I just open up the issue and just see like 3 of my favorite characters' heads on sticks. I'm just like, no. Jordan.
I know. I felt so bad.
Yeah, and that was now I don't care so much about spoiler alerts because I'm just trying to get through the series to say that I watched it, you know. But the graphic novel, it was pretty suspenseful, and I was trying to make it as special as possible in that, obviously. But Rosita, they kill Rosita off. You know, like is she not somebody they kill off in the show?
No, she's kind of just is aloof from the whole group though, because I think she liked Abraham and then he died, and she's like, I'm not gonna like anyone else anymore.
Well, I think I read somewhere that she chose Eugene to be the father of her baby or something like that, and I was like, that's not in the graphic novel.
That actually kind of does sound familiar, but yeah, there was like no chemistry. It was just very like,
well, there wasn't any chemistry between Michonne and Rick. That is such a weird relationship.
That is one of the biggest nitpicks that I have about the show. Some of the relationships are so forced. There was no like build up to it. It was just like, well, you guys are together now, and you guys are together now. Like Carol and Ezekiel, I'm like, that does not feel natural at all. Like, and
oh my gosh,
Rick
Ezekiel
and Michonne,
has somebody.
Nothing there.
See, that's wrong. They're like,
Andrea Grant hooks up with Dale. And so, which is kind of an interesting thing because Dale's super old and Andrea's young, and so they hook up. And then when Dale dies, she hooks up with Rick.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
No, anyways, I'm talking about Eugene because there's a part where they get to like one of the new communities, and there's kind of a woman on the other side that's kind of scientific. I think they have a thing like they're kind of both nerds, and she's like, I must speak to April. I'm like that's the voice I was reading. I was like, I must speak to. And then I watched the show and I realized that like the voice I should have been doing, I must speak to April. Like it's like that's lame. That's not like, again, like I thought I had a better voice in mind for Eugene when I met him. And
well, and Grant, I just need to know, maybe you haven't got this far, but does Carl fall in love with one of the Skinwalker girls?
No.
Okay, in the book he falls in love with one of them, and she's like has this weird thing for Carl without his eye, and she like licks the empty hole of his eye. She's like, what the fuck? It's so weird.
What the fuck, dude? No, she in the show she likes. Oh, where did she come from? She lost her parents. I forgot her name, but she like joins the group and like they kind of have a thing because they're pretty much the only ones like their age. So yeah, that's hilarious though. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's the most disturbing part. It's hilarious.
That's so funny.
All right, do we have any final thoughts before we wrap this guy up?
Nope.
Guys, I love that. I love it all.
I think my final thought would be, unlike a show that we just talked about, like Death Note, where the graphic novel and I think unlike
The show are very close.
I think yes. I think unlike the things like Death Note, which the movie follows the manga like the manga
almost to a T, except the ending. I heard the ending's different.
Really?
Which I just spoiled for you. I'm sorry.
I love that because that's suspenseful.
That.
You know, Harry Potter is going to follow the same. You know,
except when he snaps the wand, the Elder Wand, and throws it.
So there are going to be things like that like follow each other. I would just say that with The Walking Dead, these are two separate products here. I realize it's the same concept, same characters. I mean, they sort of follow the same timeline, but the characters carry on in different ways. Like you won't be disappointed. You're not spoiling either experience if you start with the
unless you listen to this podcast, which we spoiled like everything.
Yeah, if you listen to this podcast though, then I guess it doesn't matter, right? But so it's two separate products, and I think that you can enjoy each of them separately and feel like you're getting a lot of
for different reasons. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, everybody. You guys are amazing. The Walking Dead is so good. Zombies are amazing. Brains. All right, thanks everybody for joining us. Signing out. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.
Carl.